While my heart stopped on the operating table, my sister gave a speech and forged my signature to protect her Gala. I didn't just die. I was erased. Hey there. Thanks for being here. Before we dive in, take a moment. Maybe you're folding laundry, stuck in traffic, or just trying to breathe through a rough day. Wherever you are, this story might hit closer than you expect. Today, we meet Reese, a woman who nearly died while the people she called family posed for photos like nothing happened. Have you ever felt invisible to the ones you love most? Or wondered what it would take to finally choose yourself? Stick around until the end. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about rebirth. And if you find a piece of yourself in this journey, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. It helps more than you know, and gives me the fuel to keep sharing stories that matter. Now, let's begin.
I didn't expect to die that Tuesday. Not on a weeknight, not wearing heels, and definitely not while saving the company that forgot I existed. But that's the funny thing about being the reliable one. People don't notice when you're bleeding out until you stain their shoes. My name's Reese Callahan, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the invisible backbone of the Callahan name. Not the glamorous one, not the prodigy, just the fixer, the cleaner, the sister who knew how to Photoshop bruises out of family portraits before Camilla, my mother, posted them to her 80K Instagram followers. That morning, I was hunched over my laptop at the office, trying to finalize the presentation that might salvage Dad's latest acquisition disaster. The lights flickered above me, motion sensor timed. Everyone else had gone home. Well, almost everyone. "Reese, you look like hell," Delaney Cruz said, setting down a coffee by my elbow. She was the only coworker who ever stayed late without asking for anything in return. "I feel worse," I muttered, clutching my side. It had started as a dull ache that morning, then grew into something sharp enough to make me dizzy. But I couldn't leave. The presentation had to be finished by dawn, or Douglas Callahan, my father, the legend in legacy suits, would let the whole team go, and guess who'd get the blame? "Maybe call Sierra," Delaney offered gently, referring to my younger sister. "She's good under pressure, right?" I actually laughed at that, bitter and breathless. Sierra's busy rehearsing her acceptance speech. The Rising Women in Philanthropy Gala is tonight, remember? Right, the gala, the red carpet, the magazine covers. My sister in her signature pale gold, pretending to save orphans she'd never met. I finished slide 42 before the pain buckled me to my knees. Delaney screamed. I think someone called 911. Maybe it was me. Everything after that was flashes. The elevator, paramedics, metal ceilings, lights too bright to be real. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you're dying. Mine didn't. All I saw was a gala invitation on my desk, unopened, RSVP left blank. I blacked out to the sound of a notification ping. Probably Sierra tagging me in another post. I came back to life to the sound of someone humming the theme to Friends. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. But then I opened my eyes. Fluorescent lights, a faint antiseptic smell, IV in my arm, monitor beeping in a slow rhythm like a lazy drummer. "Hey there," a nurse said softly. Her name tag read Rory. "Welcome back, Reese. You gave us a hell of a scare." I blinked, trying to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. Rory poured water into a paper cup and guided the straw to my lips. "You flatlined for 78 seconds during surgery. Internal rupture. We nearly lost you." My brain couldn't catch up. 78 seconds? That's longer than the average TikTok. "Did anyone call my family?" I managed. Rory's kind smile faltered. "We did, left voicemails on all emergency contacts listed. No one called back." I reached for my phone on the nightstand. 0 missed calls. 1 Instagram notification. At @SierraC_official tagged you in a photo. I tapped it. There she was, Sierra Callahan, standing in front of a shimmering floral backdrop, golden gown hugging her like the cover of a fashion spread. Beside her, Camilla, radiant as ever in her signature ivory, and Douglas, beaming like he hadn't laid off 30 employees last quarter. The caption? Couldn't have done it without my incredible family. #blessed, #women who lead. The timestamp? 23 minutes into my surgery. My thumb hovered over the heart icon. I didn't tap it. Instead, I stared at the screen, trying to feel something. Anger, sadness, betrayal? But mostly, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything I had left and filled it with silence. Rory must have seen the change in my face. "I'll give you a moment," she said gently. As she left, another notification buzzed. Group text, the Callahan clan. Sierra, OMG, the after party was insane. Can someone Venmo me for the champagne tower? Lol. Reese? No. Are you okay? No. Heard you were in the hospital. Just bubbly costs and bragging rights. I stared at the ceiling, counting cracks in the tile. It felt safer than acknowledging what this meant. Then the door opened again, this time not a nurse. It was Delaney. Real coffee in one hand, a manila folder in the other. "I figured you'd need caffeine," she said, "and this." She handed me the folder. Medical proxy paperwork. "Thought maybe you'd want to make some edits." "How did you?" "Because I was here last night," Delaney said, "and they weren't." I didn't cry. Instead, I laughed. It sounded sharp, empty. "You know what's wild?" I said. "While my heart stopped, they were posing for press shots. While I flatlined, my sister posted #blessed. Delaney sat next to me, quiet for a beat. Then, well, maybe those 78 seconds weren't the end. Maybe they were the beginning. I looked down at the papers in my lap. Yeah, maybe they were. The next morning, I woke to the sound of someone arguing in the hallway. "I told you, she just got out of surgery. You can't just barge in," Rory snapped, her voice hard-edged now. Seconds later, the door swung open. And there she was, Camilla Callahan, my mother, draped in cream silk and attitude. Her perfume hit the room before she did. The faint scent of Chanel No. 5, layered with just a hint of artificial sweetness. She looked immaculate, untouched by whatever night I'd just survived. "Reese, darling," she said, air-kissing the space near my cheek, "you look exhausted." "Funny, I nearly died," I croaked, reaching for the morphine button. "Oh, don't be dramatic." She waved her hand like she was swatting away a mosquito. "You're fine now. Honestly, if I'd known it was this serious, we'd have left the gala early. I posted while I was in surgery." She blinked. "Well, darling, we had to keep appearances. Sierra was being honored. The rising star in humanitarian leadership. A very prestigious—" I cut her off. "Did Sierra mention the call I made?" Camilla smiled tight. "She said you were overreacting. Something about stomach cramps." I looked down at the IV in my arm and laughed. The sound was foreign to me now. "I flatlined for 78 seconds, and she told me to handle it yourself for once." Camilla's gaze shifted, uncomfortable. "Your sister was under a lot of pressure. You know how important that night was to her." There it was. Her night. Not my near-death experience, not the emergency surgery, just a hiccup in someone else's highlight reel. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a stack of printed reports. "Speaking of pressure, your father needs these reviewed by noon. He has a call with the Singapore investors." Rory, standing nearby, looked like she was about to launch a blood pressure cuff at my mother's head. I didn't touch the papers. "I'm not doing this anymore," I said quietly. Camilla paused, blinked, then laughed. "Oh, honey, you're tired. I'll come back after lunch." She walked out, silk heels clicking against the tile like punctuation marks to every sentence she never let me finish. Rory exhaled slowly. She's a lot. That's one word for it. I opened my phone. Another text from Sierra. Mom says you're being difficult. Whatever. Can you transfer $7,000 to cover the venue deposit? They won't take her card. No greeting, no, how are you? I hit delete. Then I opened a blank email. To hr@callahanenterprises.com. Subject, emergency contact update. Please remove the following individuals from all emergency records: Camilla Callahan, Douglas Callahan, Sierra Callahan. I hesitated, then added, also revoke all shared access to company platforms, reports, and personal documents. I hit send. That evening, Delaney returned. This time, she brought a small, battered box. "What's this?" I asked. "Your grandmother's things," she said, "from storage. I figured you'd want something that's actually yours." Estelle Monroe, my grandmother, the only Callahan who didn't use affection as a currency exchange. She left me her house in Laurel Valley, her journals, her camera. That camera now sat in the box, old but still perfect. "I remember this," I whispered. "She taught me how to frame a shot when I was 10, said I always saw what people were trying to hide." Delaney smiled. "Then maybe it's time you started looking." I spent that night scrolling through my gallery, photo after photo of my family at parties, galas, brunches, me behind the lens, always smiling, always missing from the frame. Suddenly, something clicked. I wasn't in their story. I was their stage crew, their emotional tech support. And maybe, finally, it was time to shut down the production. The next morning, Nina Prescott, our family attorney, called me directly. "Reese, we have a situation," she said, voice clipped. "There was a medical proxy submitted during your surgery." "I know, Delaney brought me paperwork to revoke it." "That's not the problem," she said. "The issue is the version on file wasn't submitted by you. It came in electronically, mid-surgery, with your digital signature." I sat up. "That's impossible." "Not if someone used your login credentials, which we confirmed came from a device registered to your sister's account, time-stamped precisely during her gala speech." I didn't say anything, just gripped the phone until my fingers went white. She forged my signature? She authorized the hospital not to contact any other parties unless it was terminal. She signed off on non-disruptive protocol, meaning she'd rather let me die than let the press know something went wrong at her big night. I want every document checked. I want every login flagged. I want every goddamn fingerprint scrubbed and matched, I said, my voice sharper than it had ever been. Nina didn't argue, already in motion. I hung up. Delaney was at the door with coffee again. This time, she didn't say anything, just handed me a note, written in my grandmother's handwriting. "Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does." That was the moment I realized. They didn't betray me last night. They'd been betraying me for years. Last night was just the first time I noticed. You'd be amazed how quickly a person can rebuild themselves when they've got nothing left to lose. 2 days after I found out my sister forged my name on a legal document while I was clinically dead, I checked myself out of the hospital against medical advice. Delaney tried to argue. Rory even threatened to call my doctor. But I was done lying in a bed while the people who hurt me kept living like I never flatlined. "Where are we going?" Delaney asked, holding my duffel as we hobbled down the sidewalk. "Home," I said. Well, not their home, mine. The apartment I hadn't lived in much, the one I paid for, but only used to collapse in between business trips and family emergencies. Cold hardwood floors, empty fridge, still had tags on half the kitchenware. I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. Inbox, 146 unread messages. Most were from Camilla. "The trust needs your approval." Douglas's CPA says the merger can't proceed without your signature. You've made your point. Now be reasonable. One subject line just said, "You're still part of this family whether you like it or not." Delaney leaned over, reading from behind me. "That's not love. That's a threat in a mother-shaped envelope." "I know," I said, and began typing. 2. Nina Prescott. Subject: Immediate legal action required. Hi, Nina. Please initiate the following immediately. Full audit of all trust accounts connected to my name. Freeze all transactions pending my approval. Initiate separation of joint financials with Douglas and Camilla Callahan. Revoke any active power of attorney documentation not submitted by me in writing. Lock all future access to medical, financial, or legal records from all listed Callahan family members. Also, confirm whether the Laurel Valley property is still in my name. I want title records. Reese Callahan. I stared at my signature. For the first time, it felt like it actually belonged to me. Delaney brought over tea and sat next to me. "They're going to come after you hard." "I know. They'll weaponize every guilt trip they've ever used." "I've lived on guilt since I was 10, I said. "Time to detox." That night, I opened a dusty drawer in my closet and pulled out a shoebox. Inside were bills from college, rent stubs, old paychecks, freelance contracts. Proof that I worked 2 jobs while my parents siphoned money from my trust fund for Sierra's lifestyle brand. Nina emailed back the next morning. "Reese, preliminary audit shows $143,000 missing from your college trust. Withdrawals logged by Camilla and Douglas between 2014-2017. Laurel Valley homes sold in 2020. No proceeds deposited into your account. Working on full documentation for legal recovery options. We'll keep you posted. Nina." I stared at the number. $143,000. While I was living on instant noodles, my mother was posting vacation photos from Venice. #Hallahans abroad. They didn't just forget about me, they used me. I forwarded the email to a new folder titled For Court. Delaney walked in wearing one of my hoodies and balancing 2 coffee mugs. "I stocked your fridge. Also, your dad's accountant called the office. Something about urgent transfers." "I'm not a bank," I said. "Well, they're treating you like one." That evening, we ordered Thai food and sat on the floor. I showed Delaney the family group chat Sierra had revived. "Sierra, don't tell Mom, but I maxed the Amex again. Can you float me $5K until the foundation event?" Camilla, "Reese, your father's lawyer said we need your digital signature by tonight. The Singapore board will walk." Douglas, "The family legacy is at stake. I trusted you." Each message was a fishing hook wrapped in nostalgia. I replied to none of them. Instead, I took a photo of my empty wine glass and posted it to my private story with the caption, "Peace tastes better than obligation." That night, I finally did what I hadn't in years. I slept. No texts at 2 a.m., no calls about Sierra's latest scandal, no guilt clawing up my spine. Just sleep. But the peace didn't last long. The next morning, a knock came at my door. Delaney peeked through the peehole. "It's Liam," she said. I hadn't seen Liam Harlow, Sierra's ex-fiancé, since last year's benefit gala, where he toasted her as the future of humanitarian innovation. He looked different, less polished. No tie, no cufflinks, just a tired man holding a manila envelope. "I need to talk to you," he said. "About Sierra?" I asked. He shook his head. "About you." I let him in. He sat at the kitchen counter, staring at his hands. "I moved out last week. It got ugly. She said some things, did some worse ones." He slid the envelope across the table. "I found this in her filing cabinet. It's a copy of the proxy form, and something else, hospital correspondence from that night." I opened the packet. My forged signature. A statement to the hospital confirming that press exposure must be minimized at all cost. Authorization to restrict emergency calls during non-fatal surgical events. I read it once, then again. "She planned it," I whispered. She had it ready. She told her assistant 3 days before that you were probably going to pull some stunt to ruin her night, Liam said quietly. I leaned back in my chair. You need to go public, he added. This isn't just family drama. This is legal. This is fraud. I know, I said. But first, I'm cutting every single string they've ever tied to me. He nodded and stood. Good luck, Reese. For what it's worth, you were always the better sister. After he left, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. Tubes gone, bruises yellowing, scars fading. And yet, for the first time in my life, I actually saw me. Not a fixer, not a fallback, not the family's walking insurance policy, just Reese Callahan, unapologetically alive. By the end of that week, I had blocked 11 numbers, all variations of my family trying to crawl back and through the cracks, Camilla's emergency-only number, Sierra's burner for foundation business, even Douglas's assistant pretending it was about family health matters. They weren't subtle. They were desperate. But I wasn't the same girl who used to leap at every buzz, every passive-aggressive, we just need a favor, masked as love. I was done being their default plan. Delaney and I sat at the kitchen table, every light in the apartment on, documents spread like war maps. Are you sure you want to do this all at once? She asked, highlighting a clause in the revocation form for shared account access. If I do it slowly, they'll find ways to talk me out of it, I said. I'm not giving them that chance. She handed me a pen. I signed. One after the other. Power of attorney, revoked. Financial co-siding, revoked. Emergency contact, deleted. Shared legal authority, terminated. Access to digital properties, intellectual rights, and trust assets, frozen. The whole time, the words from my grandmother's journal rang in my head. The ones who silence your voice are always terrified of your truth. I wasn't just untying knots. I was burning the rope. An hour later, Nina called. She said, I filed everything. They're going to notice fast. You might want to prepare. I am, I said, watching the last page of paperwork slide into the folder. Let them notice. As if on cue, Camilla called the front desk at my building. Sarah, the security guard, buzzed me. Miss Callahan, your mother's at the front entrance. Don't let her up. She's saying it's urgent, something about your father's health and foreclosure notices. Of course she was. Still no, I said. I watched from the window as Camilla paced the sidewalk in her cream trench coat, yelling into her phone, probably performing for an audience that didn't exist anymore. An hour later, Sierra sent a message from a new number. Reese, you have to help. The wedding vendors are threatening to sue me. Dad's business line is frozen. This isn't just about you anymore. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and bought a domain. 78secondsproject.com. Delaney raised an eyebrow. Planning something? Documentation, I said. Receipts. Evidence. A truth archive. The next day, a courier dropped off a box from Nina. Inside were sealed envelopes with decades of bank statements, email transcripts, signed affidavits from past employees, people who'd witnessed years of manipulation. Sierra had once called it legacy maintenance. I called it fraud in pearls. Later that night, the doorbell rang. This time, it wasn't Camilla, it was Douglas. He looked smaller. Not in size, but in stature, like years of borrowed importance had finally come due. 5 minutes, he said. Please. Delaney stood behind me, protective, but I nodded. He stepped inside, eyes scanning the apartment like he was trying to recognize it as something he hadn't purchased. I know you're angry, he started. Correct, I said, arms crossed. And I know we mishandled things, but we're your parents. We gave you everything. No, I said. You gave me conditions. You gave me obligations. I gave you everything. He looked startled, as if no one had ever challenged that math. You're not the only one hurting, he muttered. We're losing everything. I pointed at the stack of trust fund records on my coffee table. That wasn't yours to lose. He sighed. Sierra's in bad shape. The wedding's off. Jordan left. The vendors are pulling out. The house is about to be foreclosed. And you think that's my responsibility? I asked. You're the only one left who can fix this. I took a breath, then calmly said, "That's the last time you'll ever say that to me." He stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do with that. "You'll regret this," he said. "No," I said. "I regret not doing it sooner." Delaney walked him out. As the door shut behind him, I sat back down and pulled up the website builder for 78 seconds. Photo uploads, timeline entries, journal excerpts, hospital records, legal filings. Each upload felt like cutting another string off of a marionette. This wasn't revenge. This was resurrection. As I clicked publish, my inbox lit up. A forwarded email from Nina. Subject: confirmed. Callahan Estate used your digital signature to authorize the sale of the Laurel Valley property in 2020. Sale was completed under proxy without direct consent. Fraud charges applicable. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. That house was supposed to be my safety net, my exit plan, my inheritance. They sold it behind my back and used my own name to do it. Delaney appeared with wine and 2 glasses. "You good?" "No," I said, "but I'm free." We clinked glasses. To whatever comes next. 2 weeks after I launched the 70,000 Seconds project, the silence got loud. No more phone calls, no knocks on the door, just the digital debris of a family falling apart in real time. Camilla had gone quiet, too quiet, which usually meant she was planning something or suing someone. Sierra's social media rebranded overnight. Her bio went from humanitarian, founder, visionary to taking a break, please respect privacy. Public backlash had finally arrived. Delaney tossed me her phone one morning. "Check this out." It was a screenshot of Sierra's foundation site. The homepage had been taken down. Below it, a single line of text. "Temporarily closed due to restructuring." A polite way of saying, lawsuits incoming. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, like the wind had stopped for the first time in years. And then, just as I started to think they'd given up trying to pull me back in, Jordan called. Yes, that Jordan, Sierra's ex-fiancé, the one who gave her the $60K ring, the one who ghosted when the wedding imploded, the one I hadn't heard from since he handed me forged hospital documents weeks ago. His voice was low and tense. "Reese, I found something else." "What now?" I asked, already tired. "It's about your mother. Something from years ago. You should hear it in person." I met him at a coffee shop downtown. Rain slid down the windows as he pushed his phone across the table. She must have forgotten to delete it. It was buried in her old iCloud folder, dated 15 years ago. I pressed play. Camilla's voice, younger but still unmistakable, came through the speaker. "I told Sarah we shouldn't keep it, but Douglas didn't want the scandal. We couldn't afford another failure, so we kept her. But I never wanted to. God, I sound like a monster. Just delete this." I stared at the phone. Jordan was silent. "She was talking about me," I said, more to myself than to him. He nodded. "There's more." Another recording, this time from just last week. "If Reese doesn't cave, we're out of options. The bankruptcy is real this time. The inheritance is gone. We sold the Laurel house, the jewelry, everything. But she has to break eventually. She always does." The words twisted in my chest like a knife. So this was never about family. It was about funding. I sat back in my chair. They've been planning this collapse for years. I was just the emergency parachute. Jordan's face was drawn. I think Sierra knew too. She just didn't care. I stood, sliding the phone back toward him. "Thanks for showing me, really." "You're not going to say anything to them?" I zipped my jacket. They said everything I needed to hear. Back at the apartment, Delaney was watching old films on mute and editing documents on her laptop. "Bad news?" she asked, reading my face. "Worse than expected," I said. I told her everything: the recordings, the confession, the house, the inheritance that never existed because they'd already spent it before I even turned 20. When I finished, Delaney poured 2 shots of whiskey into mismatched mugs. "To surviving the people who should have protected you," she said. We clinked and drank. Later that night, Camilla showed up at my building, again. Security called upstairs, but I was already watching her through the lobby cameras. Her perfect hair was fraying, her designer bag hung off her arm like an afterthought. But even through the glass, she still wore the armor of entitlement. She buzzed the intercom. "Reese, we need to talk. Your father's health is getting worse. The stress, he's barely sleeping. You're tearing this family apart." I pressed the mic button. "You did that yourselves. You're being cruel." "No, I'm being free." She stepped back like she'd been slapped. "You owe us." I stared at her through the grainy feed. "I don't owe you anything. Not the money you stole, not the years I lost, not the version of myself I had to bury just to survive your love." She opened her mouth. I cut the feed. She didn't come back the next day. But Sierra did. This time she was alone, makeup smeared, hair pulled back like she hadn't slept in days. She shouted from the street, "Reese, please, I lost everything. Jordan's gone. The vendors are threatening legal action. Mom's having panic attacks every day. Dad can't afford medication. We're drowning." I opened the window just an inch. "You could have saved me that night," I said, "when I was dying on that table." "I panicked," she sobbed. "You don't know what pressure I was under. It was the biggest night of my life." And I was flatlining. But hey, priorities. "You're my sister." "No, I was your safety net." Her voice broke. "You're going to let us fall?" "You already did," I said. "You just didn't notice." She didn't show up again after that. Neither did Camilla or Douglas. But my email pinged the following morning. Subject: Notice of Lawsuit. From Callahan Family Legal Counsel. Reese, it is our client's intention to file legal action for defamation and financial damages resulting from the release of confidential family information. I didn't finish reading. I forwarded it to Nina with the note: "Let's bury them in paperwork." Delaney handed me my camera later that night. "You said this lens was the first thing that made you feel seen," she said. I nodded. "And now it's the thing I'm going to use to make sure they're never invisible again." I turned on the lamp. A stack of photo prints sat on my desk. Hospital monitors, court filings, the foreclosure sign, my mother pacing in designer heels, Sierra yelling into an empty sky. All captured, all true. I took a deep breath and wrote the final label for my exhibition. 78 seconds, a portrait of survival. But I wasn't done yet, because something in my bones told me they still had one last card to play.
The gallery smelled like new paint and lavender candles. I'd ask them to leave the lighting soft, no spotlights, no dramatics. Just space. Space to see. Space to breathe. Dozens of people walked the walls. Quiet, reading captions under photos I once thought I'd never share. There was the hospital bed. The EKG still showing 0078. The foreclosure notice taped crooked to a rusting gate. The voicemail transcript printed in stark black on white. Camilla's perfectly manicured hand blurred behind glass as security escorted her from my building. And in the very center of the room, a portrait of me. Not smiling, not broken, just present, whole, alive. Delaney handed me a glass of champagne. "They're here," she whispered. I didn't ask who. Camilla and Sierra lingered near the entrance like they didn't know if they were invited or trespassing. Camilla still wore pearls. Sierra still clung to last season designer like it meant something. They made it to the second photo, Sierra's forged medical proxy, before turning pale. By the fourth, they looked around and realized this wasn't revenge. It was truth. I caught Camilla's gaze for half a second. She gave me a tight smile that didn't touch her eyes. I raised my glass. Not in invitation, in goodbye. They didn't stay long. No tears, no confrontation, just the quiet click of heels fading down marble. Delaney appeared beside me again. Closure? I exhaled. Better. She grinned. What's that? I tilted my head, listening. The room had gone completely still. And for the first time since that night, since those 78 seconds, I noticed something. Silence. Not fearful, not suffocating, peaceful. 3 months later, I stood on the cliff behind Estelle Monroe's old property, what used to be my grandmother's house, watching the sunrise hit the ocean. I'd bought it back. Quietly, legally, and under a new trust. Callahan money didn't touch it. Only mine. No more secrets, no more strings, just waves and wind. My phone buzzed once, unknown number. I didn't check it. I tossed it in the sand and let the tide take it. Delaney called from the porch. Coffee's hot. I turned to go. And behind me, just footprints. No shadows.